Hello again. I'm Allison Lovejoy with Music Appreciation, and I hope you're having a good day. I'd like to talk about Sergei Rachmaninov today, one of my favorite composers who we all know and most people really love. However, Rachmaninoff's reputation as a neo-romantic almost classified him as a dinosaur in some conservatories in the 20th century. And now we can find Rachmaninoff's recordings and performances of his music everywhere. He was truly a modern romantic. He incorporated very chromatic harmony and very complex forms into a romantic language. Or shall we say, he incorporated a romantic language into modern chromatic harmony and complex forms. He was from Russia and lived there until he had to leave after the Russian Revolution, and he was known internationally as pianist, conductor, and composer. It's quite remarkable that he did all so well. But as you might know from our recent video, Rachmaninoff suffered a lot of depression, and not only did he have a difficult life and a lot of illnesses to contend with, but he traveled around the world as a refugee composer. He lived in Switzerland, he lived in New York, he lived in Beverly Hills, where he died. Born in 1873, he came from an aristocratic upbringing where he had an excellent training in piano, and he was the star of the conservatory. But when he premiered his first symphony, it was panned by the critics and destroyed him emotionally, and he couldn't write for a few years until he undertook some hypnotherapy, and then he wrote his famous Piano Concerto No. 2. Rachmaninoff then became internationally known, and when he was received in New York, it was with accolades, and people waited to hear him play. And he was very famous for touring in the United States as well as in Europe, and as a brilliant technician and a great rhythmic performer, interpreter, with very precise rhythm and exacting interpretations. His music is not easy. One of the first pieces that I learned by Rachmaninoff, let's say hello to this image, dark, brooding, and serious, and brilliant. Rachmaninoff's first prelude that was published, or one of the first publications of his, was the Prelude in C sharp minor, which he became very contemptuous of, and not only because it was his early work, but because it was too popular. In the same way that Ravel's Bolero became so popular, it misrepresented the quality of his later work. This is just the beginning of it. You only need to hear 3 notes to recognize the C sharp minor prelude. Etc. Now, when I learned it first as a teenager, I thought it was great. It was dark and romantic and difficult, but I was intimidated by all of the sharps and double sharps and chromaticism. And even in his early work, he demonstrates a propensity for using a larger range of the piano, extended chords with more than just 3 notes in them, and a lot of chromaticism, notes outside of the given key or scale. And it was also meant for big hands. He wrote a lot of music that I couldn't fit into my hands yet, or shall I say my hands couldn't fit into the music yet. I am going to play for you some of his other preludes today, as well as some transcriptions. Now, prelude is a popular form in music, which became associated initially with the preludes of J.S. Bach and the preludes and fugues. And a prelude is something that happens before something else, typically, one would expect. But actually, the preludes of Rachmaninoff and Chopin and many others are not followed by anything else. They're actually just pieces in and of themselves, sort of like tone poems. So I'm going to start with a prelude in G sharp minor, one of my favorites, also beloved by Vladimir Horowitz, who was a friend and advocate of Rachmaninoff. That piece is typical of Rachmaninoff's melodic style, a folk-like, very cantabile singing melody, very melancholic and extended. Sometimes his melodies feel as if they go on forever. Now, the most ideal example of that is the Rachmaninoff Third Piano Concerto, in which the first melody is pages long and lasts about 3 minutes. Next, I'm going to play for you a transcription of one of his own art songs. This is a piece called Lilacs, and it was a setting of a Russian poem for voice and piano. And this is a solo piano version of it. Rachmaninoff also wrote other transcriptions and of other composers' music. Some of the best known are transcriptions of Bach's movements from the sonata or the partita in E major. I'll play for you the Preludio, which is a very well-known prelude, composition by Bach for solo violin. And it's noted for its unending figure of 16th notes, a continuous rhythmic pattern. Rachmaninoff's added some harmonies that are clearly not from the 17th century. You'll know immediately what is Bach's and what is Rachmaninoff's. But it's a brilliant combination. The Prelude from the E major sonata for violin by Rachmaninoff. Rachmaninov also wrote many other types of forms. Of course, there are the 3 piano concerti and an oratorio, some operas, and several other piano pieces and sonatas, a cello sonata and the piano sonatas, and several variations on other composers' works, one on themes of Corelli and on themes of Chopin. And one of his greatest influences was the sound of folk melody in Russia, and also the bells, the church bells. You hear them in so many of his pieces. Right in the beginning of the second piano concerto, you can hear those bells. Also in a piece called The Bells, it's based on an Edgar Allan Poe poem, and this is an oratorio for soloists and orchestra and chorus. I'm going to play for you a few more of the preludes and a few more pieces, one prelude and one moment musical. This is the G major prelude. Now that piece demonstrates some of Rachmaninoff's skill at creating colorful textures, almost similar to some of the works of the Impressionist composers. Tonal effects, a lot of use of pedal, and repeated figures. But it still has the well-known trademark of Rachmaninoff, which is the beautiful melody. The next piece I'm going to play for you is a moment musical. These are short pieces. He published 6 of them, and they are sort of like it's an etude tableau, like an album leaf, like etude tableau. It's a sort of a tone picture, and this is the etude tableau in G minor. I have one more piece for you today, and this is the Prelude in D major. It has epically romantic melodic lines and a beautiful harmony. It's one of the pieces I played for my college graduation recital, and still one of my favorites. Opus 23, number 4, dedicated to Monsieur Solotti, who was a teacher of Rachmaninov's. Thank you for listening to the wonderful music of Rachmaninov, one of my favorite composers. I invite you to explore the Rhapsody on a theme of Paganini, one of his piano concertos that's based on the famous violin caprice, as well as the second and third piano concertos, and the great piece, the oratorio called "The Bells." And he also recorded some of Chopin's works and some of his own, and they're still available. And I hope you have a good week, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.